Well, it's 7:30 on this lovely Tuesday, August 29th,
Actually, Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, it is Thursday.
Yeah.
It is Thursday.
Did I put Tuesday?
What
on
is
there?
it? Well, it's the 29th, that's for sure, regardless what day of the week it is. So it is 7:30. I call the Board of Health meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda tonight, Thursday night, is to hold a variance hearing for 86 Fruit Street, a septic system upgrade. And I have a preamble to read into the minutes first, which says that this variance hearing is called to order. It is my duty to inform you, the applicant, that you will have to provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health regulations, and that if you don't receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So I presume, since Mr. Glossa is here, you are representing the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Long. Oh, there they go. No one came out with it.
Yep.
So, should I give those to you, Wade?
Sure, give it to Betsy right here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, when I ruin, they'll be selling me a new one.
It's on.
Okay, thanks, Betsy. So I am representing John McClure and Barbara Cohen, who are the owners of this piece of property at 86 Fruit Street. This is the last house on Fruit Street before you would get into Medfield. They actually did approach Medfield about connecting into the sewer, but Medfield declined, basically saying that there's no intermunicipal agreement between Norfolk and Medfield, so they declined to allow them to do that. And so after that, I set up soil testing with the town and with your consultant. We had our surveyors survey the property and went out to the property. Basically, right now, there's a septic tank and some leaching trenches or a leach bed at the rear. The inspector failed the tank and the leaching system. Basically, I think the leaching system is clogged, but from our soil testing, I think it's also probably in the water table or very close to it. So we started with test pit 1. Again, found some soil at the top, which didn't seem to be very good for a septic system. Got down a bit deeper and got into some soil which we thought was sandier. When we did test pits 2 and 3, you could definitely see the change in the soil and how it became more sandy once you got down to a depth of about 6.5 or 7 feet. So similar to Pennacook Street, when I was here a month or so ago, the problem is that, and especially because I think it's been a wetter summer than we normally have, at those elevations, the hole was filling up with water. We were in the water table at that time, even though the mottling and the other indications are that the water table actually is quite a bit higher than what we saw. So these people, I believe, would like to sell their house as soon as they can. I think they have some financial need to sell it as soon as they can. So rather than try to wait until next summer or late this year, if all possible, we decided to take samples. So we took them from 2 and 3. We took them down at the layers, which is 4 feet thick, the layer that we saw, which was the sandier soil, sent it to a lab, this Filch Engineering, which used to be GZA, or they bought their lab from GZA. And they basically came back, said it's sandy loam. The EP policy allows us to ask for local upgrade approval and apply to a sandy loam, an uncompacted sandy loam, a loading rate of .33 gallons per day per square foot, which essentially translates into a 30-minute an inch perk rate, which in my estimation I think is probably pretty conservative here. It's a very reasonable perk rate. You can see it translates into a fairly large system. So what would have to happen here is we would take out all of the material down to the layer that was classified as the sandy loam, fill that with septic sand, and actually that's going to be slightly above the ground because I think we're talking about 40 or 43 inches for the water table. We're going to create our 48 inches of separation and then build this system of leaching chambers on top of that. The other parts to this system are that we would replace the septic tank with a 1,500-gallon, two-compartment septic tank, and then we would have a pump chamber because, we can't create the separation by gravity. So we would have a pump chamber with a pump and pumping into these leach chambers. I did agree with Wade. If you look at his note to you, I did forget to give him the data on the buoyancy, the emergency overflow, and there's some third thing. But I did forget to give that to him, but I can guarantee you, I do this all the time, this tank is not a problem with buoyancy. These are 6-inch wall tanks, and you need a lot higher water table to float that tank. As far as the manifest injustice, I mean, this is a timing issue. Again, these people are in need of selling this house as quickly as possible. And to require them to wait, to go back and do the soil testing, I think is just not something that would be in their best interest. As far as this proposal protecting the environment, I believe it protects the environment to the same extent that a conventional procedure would do, and that would be to do the perk test, because the DEP has essentially allowed us to do this. They've done the tests on the soil, and again, it's my opinion anyway, that the system is at least as big, or not a little bit bigger, than it would end up if we actually were able to do a perk test. So I guess with that, Mr. Chairman, I could answer any questions that you might have.
Let's hear from Wade.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, the applicant is seeking relief of a percolation test, actually 2 of them. And what Mr. Glosser was talking about is correct. We were out there in the month of August and found groundwater intercepting the area we wanted to perk. And to wait for the groundwater to drop, it probably would take maybe a year or so if we had another dry summer, the following summer, because groundwater is going to start rising in a couple of months. So this is probably the driest time of the year. And the state does recognize these conditions can occur, on properties and without Massachusetts. And this is to repair an existing system. They're not increasing the bedroom number in the house. And the percolation results, well, the testing from the lab is actually requires a bigger system. I'm not saying the bigger is the better, but it does amplify the system to be a lot bigger. Mr. Glass has designed it to meet Title V, and the only thing he really needs is the percolation recognition. What I'm asking for is the calculations for a day storage. That's pretty much standard stuff. And the buoyancy calcs too was only asked just to checks and balances. It wasn't to challenge the size of the tanks or the location of the tanks. It's just something typical that's on a plan to make sure that there is enough weight of the system in the soil to keep the tank down if they ever pump it out. So high groundwater doesn't pop out of the ground. But I would recommend approval with the 3 conditions. Also, garbage grinder is the 3rd one, John.
Okay.
Deed restriction for garbage. Oh, and I also can verify that homeowners do need to hurry up with it too. I heard the conversation on the site. Sorry.
Questions? So it's just the relief from the percolation test itself. You're looking still at 4 feet between the modeled zone designation.
That's correct. We're going to be left with 4 feet of separation between the groundwater table as determined by the mottling
Yeah.
and the bottom of these leaching chambers. So we're only asking for the one waiver, and for what it's worth, this year, I think I've done this 5 or 6 times in Walpole. It's just this year, it's been wet. We see water table now where, especially this time of year in August, I'm seeing water table where, you just wouldn't expect to see it. I mean, we're still using the mottling, et cetera, to develop, where our water table is. But just as far as doing the percolation test, it's just a little bit of an anomaly this year that we've had a bunch of these where we actually weren't able to do the perk test. So it's not something where I'm coming in front of you guys, only doing this in other towns, and probably where I maybe do this once or twice a year. This year, I think it's probably 10 or 11 or 12 so far. So just the way the weather worked out this year, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, also, when the engineer's out there to design it during field work, he doesn't just choose, I'm going to do a sieve analysis and walk away. There's actually have to have conditions out there that warrants the procedure to follow through. And one would be environmental conditions not allowing you to do a percolation test. So the groundwater has to be up high, and it has to be witnessed by your agent. So not everybody can just come in and say, I want to do a sieve analysis.
Yeah. I think we have at least one abutter here.
We do indeed.
Could you identify yourself, sir?
I'm Walter Byron at 80 Fruit Street, next door. I think these two systems that exist probably were built at the same time. My house is built in 1964. I moved in 1968 and been there 45 years. So my interest is to understand what's going on, because ultimately it'll probably happen to me when it's time to sell my house. I don't have any plans to do that, but nevertheless I'm interested in what's going on, what the soil conditions are, what the resulting design will look like. Particularly interested in how high above the current grade, if you will, the system will be. Many of these systems in our greater neighborhood are significantly above ground. In fact, there's one on Mohegan Street that's in the front yard. It looks like the devil. This one's in the back, obviously, as mine is and would be if we had to redesign it. So I'm interested in the design and how it will ultimately look.
What is the grade change that you're proposing here, John?
Well, I'm sorry. Well, we're on about a 250 contour, and the finished grade over the system on the high side is 251.11. So it's about a foot and an inch or a foot and 2 inches above the ground that's there now. And the system is, the system's about, I think it's about 17 feet wide, and the system is, where's it say, 48 feet long, so then you're going to add 30 feet each way to that, and that's going to be what's going to be raised up, essentially. So I think it will look, it will look raised up when you see it, but I don't think it's aesthetically is all that terrible. It's about a foot and a little bit more higher than the ground that's there now.
Walter?
Thank you for that information. Of course, there's no guarantee that mine will look exactly the same as this one, but that nevertheless is encouraging that 1.5 feet or 2 feet, I mean, you can grade that. It doesn't look like it's anything, so that's encouraging. Thank you.
Is there a motion then?
Motion to accept the.
Grant the variance? I'll second it. Now, there is some requirements here. You did mention the need for a deed restriction, no garbage grinder,
Correct. And also a request for a buoyancy calculation for the proposed
Which is
pump
coming,
chamber
right?
and septic
Yes.
tank.
and
And calculations and volumes for emergency storage and dosing for pump chamber tank.
so that's data that's coming, John?
Yeah, yeah, and those are, as Wade said, it's just data. Like I said, the only one that anybody could sort of say, well, we don't know about that, but I can just tell you from my experience and design these things all the time, that this tank doesn't float at this water table elevation. So this tank probably weighs about 17,000 pounds, I think, and the push up here is probably 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. I'm just kind of going off of the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that this tank's probably 5 tons more pushing down than that water can push it up. So as far as the volumes, 1,000-gallon pump chamber, you need 330 gallons of storage, emergency storage. Generally what happens is, just because of the way these things get set up, there's about 600 or 700 gallons of storage in those. So there's no issue. I'm going to obviously provide the data to your consultant prior to, but there's no issue. I just want to assure you that.
All right, so that data will be forthcoming.
Yes.
So in that case, we have a motion and a second with the requirements that have been described. All in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what. So 7:45, we have on the agenda, maybe the final for a while, Brambley Farm update.
Yes, well,
So Wade, you're on the floor again.
thank you, Mr. Chairman of the board and member of the board. I give good, well, this is actually a good report. I believe that the Bramley Farm is in compliance. When I was there on the 15th of August, went through, the whole farm, big circle, and they had 20 adults, and they had many piglets running around. And it's now seems to be converted to a birthing operation for their pigs, and seem to be satisfied. I saw an employee walking in there. They had the central manure pile still being worked on. And I think in the long term, if they continue with their density control and manure control, I think the residential and the agricultural use of that street can probably blend together and hopefully live harmlessly together.
Yeah, well, this was kind of an experiment. We were hoping we'd get this outcome, and apparently we did. So I guess there's some room for optimism, but I think we're on the right track here.
I have to give the O'Harts a lot of credit too. They stayed with their plan and they were honest and they went through everything. The people
Yeah.
might have doubted it.
Yeah. Well, let's hope there are no more phone calls or emails or other communications from the neighbors to suggest that the experiment did not work. But for right now, it looks like it's going to. All right. Next on the agenda, continued discussions of the Board of Health on-site sewage regulations. Right. Well, let's see, when did we start this conversation? It's about 3 or 4 years ago?
Sure, you can still continue too, Mr. Chairman, if you want to. It's good. It's good.
It just stays on as an agenda item.
Yeah, well, it's the one that refuses to go away, because we refuse to act upon it. I think when we finally have all three of us here, we should put that one to bed finally. I mean, there's no reason why we can't. Um,
It's not a bad regulation. There's a lot of good pluses in it. And I think it's really important that the Board of Health takes their time and digests a regulation that they're going to adopt, changing from the past into the future.
Well, we have certainly taken our time. Yeah, when we get Jeff back, we will act upon it. Now, we do have some other things to take care of, including the engineering RFP. I'm kind of assuming that to work on that, we should probably ask for our consultants to recuse yourselves from the conversation, since we're basically proposing the ground rules for something you're going to respond to.
Absolutely.
So let's do everything but that now, and then we'll come back to that at the end, okay? In fact, is there anything that requires your presence here? We got to sign some vouchers. The minutes of 7:30. Did you see these already, or are they new?
They're new. I put them
Okay.
in your packet if
Okay.
you wanted to
All
look
right.
through 'em. Some vouchers. You made it from Foxborough, okay?
Just barely.
Oh, the game.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for the directions.
Oh, yeah. It's like,
I couldn't believe it.
that was a good
Yeah.
heads up.
Getting here was not a problem tonight. The problem is I had meetings up north and tried to come south along Route 1 about mid-afternoon, and they were going crazy about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's early.
Well, I think part of the problem is that they weren't opening the lots, so people like trying to stop in the road till the lots open.
That's what we don't want the
It
party.
was nuts.
Didn't the zoning stop people to park on people's private land? Along
No,
Route
they
1?
can't run, they are not allowed to run like for-profit parking lots if they're private residences, I think.
Yeah, I wonder why.
They can't charge people.
Right, right. So that would create more of a congestion on the road because people have places to park.
Did you get a chance to read the minutes?
I did.
Did it look okay?
Look fine.
Would you be willing to make a
I
motion?
would motion
to
to
approve?
accept the minutes from Tuesday, July 30th, 2013.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved.
Should we schedule them
You need a-
next?
Yeah, why don't we do that now, since
Yeah,
after that, you guys can pretty much take off.
Oh,
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
Let me bring my calendar.
Don't forget your sandwich.
Huh?
Don't forget your sandwich.
Thank you. I left a note on my spec.
There you go.
Can we do the 17th or the 24th of September?
Either one of those works for me.
The 24th works better for me.
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any variances coming down the pike, as
Yep.
far as you know?
Nothing's been submitted. I heard potentially there was gonna be a request for a variance, but it's for new construction, so I'm not sure. If that's gonna happen.
If
so.
it needs to be on the 17th, just let me know.
Yeah,
then
I
we can
think
move
we
things
can,
around.
I think we can push it off.
Okay.
All right, so the 24th then for our next meeting.
That's good,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
I
So,
did just want to mention
Yeah.
one thing, which is just to let you know that we have issued the permit for the medical office building,
Okay.
the recirculating sand filter, and
Mhm.
I wanted to really thank Wade publicly for that, because he just worked extraordinarily hard on that. He worked weekends, he emailed things back and forth, and was just extremely responsive, so
Thank you, Tom.
it's approved.
Thank you.
all right.
And it's a complicated system, but
Yeah, it is comforting. You might see something else coming your way, too. aggregate faculty where they use neighboring lands to combine with a lot that's being built. So they can absorb, so the land that they're adding onto that lot will absorb more nitrogen loading, so they can change their system to a conventional Title V system.
Yeah, I think they don't actually want to build the,
The one that's been approved,
you know,
right.
Right, and that was just a push, hoping that it would just go through as, you know, an incompliant system, but they chose complying to Title V guidelines. But thank you, Tom, appreciate it.
All right.
much deserved.
And thank you as well.
Yeah, it's part of the job, guys. I know how important it was for the town. It's like back in the 1990s again, when the developers coming in really aggressive. You know, they built like yesterday.
It's good. Means the economy's improving.
Yeah, I think so. Saw 2 new homes and a couple of repairs today. In work. So, new homes still coming in. Well, do you need us for anything else?
I think we're there, except for the last issue.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, Betsy.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
So Betsy, these are all signed.
Thank you, Cheryl.
There you go. It's not much for mail. I'll take those for Betsy.
So did you get my email today? I sent you copies of the Board of Health, the prior Board of Health and the Planning Board article.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I printed off the Board of Health version.
If you need, I can go make copies of both.
Did you?
I didn't print it off.
All right.
I'll go print them.
Well, if you print one more,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'd be good, yeah.
Do you want both or just Board of Health?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think we need to focus on the Board of Health one.
Right.
And presumably the two are compatible, they were originally,
Okay.
so,
Let me go print one.
all right.
Thank you, Betsy.
Actually, I remembered this. It looked familiar, vaguely familiar. In fact, I don't think a lot of it changed from way back when,
Okay.
in terms of general description of the services and all that.
Right.
In fact,
What is the term for the contract? Is it just a year or?
I thought it was going to be for 3. I'll check. Yeah, scope of services really hasn't changed. You know, the 24-hour services, have a fax machine, all that kind of stuff. It looks as though, I can't remember exactly, but it looks like the minimum criteria in terms of education and certifications,
Right.
that looks the same to me. I think where I see a separation is when you get to the so-called comparative evaluations, the
Okay.
things that separate being okay versus not okay versus really good.
Good.
I mean, I remember back in the day, we used to have things like, in fact, we still do, a master's
Master's.
degree was the thing for highly advantageous. So I only had really a couple of questions, which I highlighted in this one. And maybe when she gets back with a copy, we can take a look at them. But actually, they're right here. In the comparative section, it says, a simply arithmetic average rating based on the evaluation criteria designated A through, that's all these guys, will be calculated for each proposal from an engineering firm. So that means all the criterion that go from letters A through M, which is in fact all of them, including 2, which are for engineering firms,
Okay.
which means at least one member of the team has
That's
certain
good.
requirements, et cetera. So these 2 are for firms. But then the next sentence says, originally it said, average ratings for proposals from individual engineering firms will be calculated based on evaluation criteria in the table. I think
Oh.
that just said the same thing again.
Right,
I think what we're talking about here is individual engineers.
right.
And so
So the individual engineers are A through K,
Yeah.
and then L and M are for the
firms.
firms.
So
Okay.
I think we just need to separate those out so that the individual engineer is essentially being rated
Mm-hmm.
on the first part of the table. And then after that, it makes sense.
Right.
And something else that we didn't have designated anyplace else is how many references are required and where do they need to come from? There's nothing in here about references,
Okay.
which
So
I
we need to-
thought was a little bit of an omission.
Mhm.
We talk about the content of references, but never
Right.
about like how
How many.
many. And do they need to come from, for example, municipalities rather than, say, from doing private
For-
work? So,
Here you go. It says at least 3 professional letters of reference from individuals familiar with your work and who are in a position to comment critically on it.
oh,
So
it's
that's in the
after that.
application. So it's in the application.
Okay. So it's 3 from those familiar. I wonder whether they should be municipalities, or at least one.
At least one. I think at least one from
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, all right. Let's put that in then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then it kind of makes sense.
Okay.
Because what we're talking about here is at least one of the, where is the references here?
Right.
It says, what if you get negative references? Well, why would you submit a negative reference? That doesn't make sense to me. Unless they come into us without being known to the applicant.
Right, which happens on occasion, that if somebody knows that somebody's applying, or if you know that somebody's not doing the job that they need to do, sometimes people will send in a reference or make a comment. But if you're
Mhm.
having, and I hate to say, well, and this will be probably 3, because if you're going for a job, you don't give mediocre references.
Right,
So,
right.
thank you.
There you go.
Thanks, Betsy. We were just talking about the need for references. And the bid spec says you need to have 3 references from professionals who are familiar with your work.
Mm-hmm.
But then above that, when you're in the table talking about the references, the not advantageous reference is one where the applicant receives negative references regarding expertise, diligence, and et cetera. Well, why would anybody in their right mind send you a letter
If they had no references?
if it was a negative reference? I presume the references come with the application as opposed to coming in independent.
I think it comes with the whole packet.
Right, because
Yeah.
you're attaching it.
So if they're attached, then how in the world could that possibly ever show up? So, yeah, maybe if nobody was paying attention to the letters as they came in and just stuck them in the, I guess maybe it could happen. All right, well, I guess we'll just let it ride then.
Yep.
And if that's unobservant, then they deserve to get a 0 for that one. And the only other one that I saw in here I just wondered about was, oh, yeah, and Betsy, if we back up, we're on page 4
Yep.
now. At the top of page 4, it talks about a simple arithmetic average rating based on criteria A through M of the table that follows, will be calculated for each proposal from an engineering firm, which makes sense because the last 2 of those, L and M, are for firms. So the whole list, including L and M, are from a firm. But then I think the next sentence was supposed to be for an individual engineer submitting an application. And if that's the case, then why does it say engineering firm again in the next sentence? I think it makes more sense to say an average rating for proposals from individual engineers will be based on evaluation criteria, and then I would say A through K in the table, which leaves out the last 2, which are based upon teams from a firm.
Yep.
So if that makes sense to
I think so.
everybody here. And I think that's what we should do. So the firms are graded on A through M, individuals are rated on A through K.
Gotcha.
I think that really is the original intent. I'm not quite sure how it got mangled up a little bit. Do you see any reason not to do it that way?
No, I'm just making sure, yeah, because the following criteria apply only to engineering firms that have a designated team, so that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and you wanted to have the references, free professional, at least one,
At least one from a, yeah. So
Yep.
on page what?
page 6, Betsy. So for references,
Wait a minute, it's different somehow than this
oh,
one. It's-
maybe how it got printed. So it's page
Go
7
to
on yours.
Exhibit A.
It's Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, yeah.
Yeah.
D, we were thinking at least one of those three references should come from a municipality. So let's put that in.
So just
At least three professional letters of reference from individuals familiar with your work. Where's that gonna go? From individuals familiar with your work. Maybe three letters of reference, including at least one from a
Mhm.
municipality. Put that in after the word reference.
Yep.
And then later on, from individuals familiar with the work and who are in a position to comment critically on it. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that'll do it.
Mhm.
I mean, the rest of this looks,
Do we, the price
Yep.
exhibit, it says the
gotta be
anticipated
changed.
budget fiscal year 2011, so it should be fiscal year 2014?
well, yeah, there's a lot of dates in here that gotta all
Yeah.
be
Yeah,
updated.
Yeah,
I hadn't
did it.
changed any of that.
Okay, all right.
And whatever our budget
We want to make it a
says.
three-year contract?
Yeah, I think
That would
we
be great.
should. That's what it was
Yeah,
back in
that's
the,
what it was initially. I think we made it a one-year contract way back when in hopes that the planning board and the Board of Health
Would be on the
could
same
get
page?
in sync.
Oh, okay.
oh, so is the planning board still only a one-year contract?
They did the same thing as you did and extended it to October 31st.
Right, but what they're gonna be putting out now, is that gonna be a one-year
don't-
or a three-year?
They haven't talked about it, but I'm hoping it'll be a 3-year, so we'll be in line.
Well, let's set the precedent here and see if
Mhm.
Right.
they wanna go along with this.
2000.
An Exhibit F, do we need to change anything, update for general liability? Does that need to be updated? Has anything changed in the last few years?
I'm just a chemist, I don't know.
Yeah,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay, can we just maybe check with
Mhm.
council,
Well,
make
yeah,
sure?
maybe, yeah, probably,
I'll send this off to town council anyway to look
Okay.
at.
Okay.
And just make sure
yeah,
that
well,
the
Jack
liability
may,
is.
may know
Right.
as well.
And our fee structure, have they changed
I
at all?
don't think so, but I'll double check it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I didn't print all those
Attachment.
end pages.
Yeah, just our fee structure, and then
Yeah, no, that hasn't changed.
that's changed, okay. So when do we need to get this ball rolling? If we're looking at October
Mhm.
31st, so we need to have this done soon, within beginning of September?
Mm. I'll send it off to Jack and town council next week
Okay.
and, get their thoughts on this.
I mean, presumably they approved this once upon a time, and we're
Right.
not talking about major changes here.
Right.
So, if this can all be agreed to, what's the next step besides just putting out the ads?
Yeah, advertising it,
Mm-hmm,
putting it out to the central register.
mm-hmm.
That's about it.
I'm trying to remember, how long does it gotta be out there? What is the
Was it a
period?
couple weeks? At least a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Mhm.
If not more.
so if it went out in the end of September,
Would have
probably more like the
Yeah.
middle of September.
So should we, do we need to,
If need be, you can always extend PSC's contract,
for a month?
you know, a month to allow us time.
Mhm.
But do we need to bring this back to us, and do we need to do the final approval of it before it goes out?
You should probably vote on it.
Well, certainly if,
Yeah.
we can vote on what we just agreed to.
Right,
If there's any changes, then yeah, we'll have to go back and
Right.
take another look. If it looks like it's okay to the town council and to Jack,
Yeah, I can send out a, you know, a red line version with just the small changes that we made.
okay.
okay, so, Shirley, okay with the changes?
I'm fine with the changes, yeah. So I motion to accept the changes as stated, which is on page 4, correct?
So on page 4, we're changing that one sentence about engineering.
Right, so average ratings for proposals from individual engineers will be calculated based on the evaluation criteria in the table A through K.
Yep.
Oh, and above that, the comparative will be calculated for each proposal from an engineering firm A through M.
Yeah, it's what it says already.
Okay, yep, A through M, okay. And then did you have another change on the next page?
I think I ended up not, let's see, receive, yeah, I let it go.
Yep,
Six.
anything there?
Yeah, this one I thought about it and then I thought, yeah, forget
Okay,
it.
all right.
So, forget it.
All right, and then in Exhibit A, references,
Yeah,
attach 3 professional letters of reference, at least one from a municipality, from individuals familiar with your work and who are in the position to comment critically on it.
I
Okay.
got that.
And then the only other changes,
Or the
The
dates.
The
the
dates.
dates and the numbers.
dates and the budget numbers, and that making it a 3-year contract. I motion to make those changes.
Okay, I second. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
So if we need to meet again prior to this going out, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's-
we'll just have to find a time to do it, that's all.
Yep, we have a quick meeting.
All
All
right,
right, I can work on that next week.
Perfect.
okay. Is there other business that we need to
I have none.
transact? You have none?
No other business.
Oh my goodness, you've been here almost an hour. What is wrong with this operation?
Go watch the Patriots game.
Good. Is there a motion to go watch,
To watch the Patriots.
to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
All